These days, current events unfold on a dozen channels. Headlines all seem to be shouting, and good news can be as scarce as a moment to relax. So let's turn down the noise this summer, unplug just a little bit, and head to a shelter from the storms of life. The historic port city of Alpena, located on the sunrise shore of Michigan. Only a few hours drive, but miles away from the weight of the world. Nestled between a vast forest and an endless clear blue bay, where the wonders of nature are as welcoming as the local hospitality. We can explore more than 200 shipwrecks in the largest freshwater sanctuary anywhere. Count the stairs to the top of a lighthouse, or the masts that jet into the harbor sky at moonrise. Let's take a trip to the friendly, picturesque city of Alpena, a haven from the world that's pure Michigan. Your trip begins at michigan.org.
For your viewing pleasure, this broadcast of the Municipal Council meeting of Alpena is made possible by the funding provided by the City of Alpena. Thank you for your generosity.
Good evening and welcome to Alpena City Council meeting May 18th, 2015. Call the order, please.
Johnson? Here. Nielsen? Here. Nowak?
Here.
Sexton?
Here.
Walagora?
Here. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The opportunity to read the regular minutes from, minutes from regular session May 4th, 2015 and special session of May 7th, 2015. Any issues, problems, changes? Any modifications to the agenda this evening? Okay, citizens appearing before council on agenda and non-agenda items are allowed a maximum of 5 minutes to address your concerns. This is the only time you're allowed to address council, with the exception of this evening. If you have any comments about the budget itself, there's a public hearing for the budget later, but any other comments, please come to the podium and state your name and address for our records.
Evan Paul, City Planner. I just wanted to let everybody know the bridge at Duck Park connecting the island was taken down today. So that will be out of service for a while, I'm assuming. But so the only access to the island will be by boat right now. So I just want to make it public knowledge that the bridge is now down. So.
Right. Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
It's actually out of there. It's gone. There's lots of people on the wow.
Last minute thing.
Oh, you're
Okay.
fine.
Wendy Wessel, about machine. Good evening. I'm a parent of a high schooler, and it appears our city police right now are kind of bullying them. You guys, these are teenagers. They're also the future. They are future voters. They are future juries. I pulled into the Michigan parking lot right after the city police left, who were harassing the kids about parking between the lines. Every truck I saw was parked between the lines, except for one in which a kid was dropping something off. We have kids that are fighting tickets and they're winning it. But what about the parents that don't have the money? They don't have the money to leave work. They don't have the money to get a lawyer. That's money leaving our community with higher insurance rates. It's a concern. I'm not saying the kids are all correct, but I'm saying we have to let them be kids. It just seems that I'm not hearing anything about the state police. I'm not hearing anything about the sheriff's department, but it does appear right now that the city police, a few, not all, just seem to be. The one kid told me a cop came up and said, "I'm giving you a ticket for noise." The kid said, "I don't even have my radio on." He's like, "Well, I saw you a few blocks back. You did." Give him a ticket. Who's fighting for that kid? And who's going to believe him? It's the cop, it's the kid. That's a future juror. In the future, that kid's going to remember that, and maybe that cop is telling the truth. We just can't have that. I would like somebody to look into how many tickets are being given to the kids versus the rest of the population lately. There was a Friday in which 27 tickets, from what I'm told, it's in the 20s, were issued to teenagers, fix-it tickets. You can walk into any store parking lot and issue that many tickets to adults. It's always been bad in this town between teenagers and cops. It's something that has to be balanced. It's always, I grew up with it. It just seems to be getting a little excessive lately. There's a lot of these kids that are good, and lump them all as one, to keep pulling them over. I was picking up my son one night. It was 5 o'clock at night. There was 3 boys. They were pulled over for crossing the white line. It was purely for the cop. Just look at the vehicle. No problem, no ticket, nothing. They were let go. Everything's fine. But why should they have been pulled over just because they were 3 teens in a pickup truck at 5 o'clock on a weekday? They're just, somebody has to step up and just say something. And hopefully this doesn't get my kid pulled over even more now. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy.
My name's Eric Bauer. My address is 1629 East Home Road. I just like to add a couple things to what she said. Not only are we being pulled over things like that, but it just seems that the way that the cops are going about it, they're parking on sidewalks, on people's lawns. They're parking on businesses that I know, some of them might be some of the ones that could be complaining about something, but I know for sure that other ones aren't. And I know they can park on certain places, and I realize that, but it just, and also, like she said, a lot of the tickets have been overturned, and I had one the same thing. And it's one of the cops that's doing it now. Mine was last winter. And I only had so much money to buy my truck, and it had a little problem. I went down the road sideways, just a little bit. And he said that I was drifting for a block and a half, and I had a careless driving ticket, and I had to fight it to get it overturned. So it's just things like that they're just see one thing and see that's a high schooler, and it just feels like they're just targeting us. And it's just getting really tough, and you have to watch everything we do, and even things that we're not doing, they're still, it just feels extremely pointed at us. So, thank you.
Okay. Hey, thanks. Thank you, Eric. We appreciate you coming in and voicing your concerns, really. Well, all set. This evening, consent agenda, bills to be allowed in the amount of $356,886.90.
I move we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Nielsen?
Yes.
Nowak?
Yes.
Sexton?
Yes.
Walagora?
Aye.
Johnson? Yes.
And I'll just back up just really quick, because I'm just gonna go out on a limb and guess that it might be your first time at a council meeting, but during an open public comment, we're really not allowed to get into a debate or any discussion with you, but we did take some notes, and so I don't want you to feel like I just kind of shut you down, but we took some notes and we'll take a look at what you had to say. We just don't get into it here during this meeting. Okay, thanks. Sorry, presentations, none. Announcements, none. I have proclamations this evening. Whereas multiple sclerosis, MS, is a neurological disease of the central nervous system affecting 2.3 million people worldwide, and whereas the National Multiple Sclerosis Society Michigan chapter reports that in our state more than 18,000 people are diagnosed with MS, and that the disease generally strikes people in the prime of their life between ages 20 through 50 and causes unpredictable effects in which the progression, severity, and specific symptoms cannot be foreseen. Excuse me. And the cause and cure for this often debilitating disease remain unknown. And where funds raised through the National Multiple Sclerosis Society feel the effects of nearly 380 research projects globally totaling $50.2 million annually to the best medical centers, universities, and other institutions throughout the United States and abroad. Because of this, MS research has never been more hopeful than it is today. And whereas discovering the cause, finding a cure, and preventing future generations from being diagnosed with MS is an important task that all Americans and Michiganians should support, and whereas the City of Alpena recognizes the importance of finding the cure of MS, a chronic and often devastating disease, and expresses its appreciation and admiration for the dedication that the National Multiple Sclerosis Society Michigan chapter has shown towards a future free of MS. Now, therefore, I, Matthew J. Walagora, by the virtue of authority vested in me as mayor of the City of Alpena, do hereby proclaim May 27, 2015 as World MS Day in the City of Alpena, and do commend this observance to all of our citizens. I encourage all Michiganians to learn more about multiple sclerosis and what they can do to support individuals with MS and their families. And this evening I have Dan Harrison here. Yeah, you have to tell me again what organization.
Thank you very much.
One this evening. Whereas Alpena Public Schools and Alpena Career and College Access Network are committed to their partnership in improving the economic future and career prospects of citizens of the City of Alpena, and whereas we use the term college here to refer to the attainment of valuable credentials beyond high school, including professional or technical certificates, academic degrees, and military service. And whereas we are committed to the goal of increasing the proportion of Alpena residents with high-quality degrees, certificates, and other credentials to 60% by the year 2015 in order to meet our projected national, state, and local workforce needs. And whereas the goal of College Decision Day is to recognize high school seniors for their plans for post-secondary education and training, spur on those who haven't yet developed their post-secondary plans, and encourage younger students and families to prepare early for career success. Now, therefore, I, Matthew J. Walagora, by the virtue of authority vested in me as the mayor of the City of Alpena, do hereby proclaim Thursday, May 21st, 2015 as College Decision Day in the City of Alpena, and encourage all citizens of the city to recognize, celebrate, and support the graduating students of the class of 2015 as they take steps to prepare for their post-secondary education and training, which will help shape the economic future of our community. Lee Fitzpatrick is here, school superintendent. Next up, we have a public hearing on the city budget. Open the public hearing and report by the city treasurer and city manager.
In regards to the preliminary budget that was presented to you on May 4th, there are just a few changes that we had to make. They do not affect any of the dollar amounts in the city funds. In the sewer fund, an account number was titled incorrectly. The dollar amounts are the same. The second one is a little bit more complicated. The assessor must calculate that base tax rates and millage reduction fractions. In doing so, he follows the Headley Amendment, which says that if the revenue from taxable value increases due to adjustments such as the market went up, as opposed to new construction, more than the rate of inflation, the millage rate must be reduced. So the municipality only receives a rate of inflation revenue increase. The DDA millage must be rolled back from 2 mills to 1.9934 for 2015 because the amount of taxable value increase due to adjustment was greater than the rate of inflation. It has less than a $100 impact on their revenue. Several pages of the budget had to be changed to reflect the new millage, and we did attach those pages. Leslie Dort, the DDA director, will inform her board of the correct tax millage. The city's millage rate of 16.2316 did not need to be rolled back and was used to project the revenue for our 15-16 budget. Of note, when the assessor calculates the base tax rate, it may reduce the millage but can be overridden by discussing the millage rate as we have done above, and we always publish it as part of our public hearing. The Headley Amendment, as explained above, cannot be overridden, and that is why the DDA's millage must be rolled back. Other than that, we found no errors. Did receive no comments.
Oh, no comments?
I skipped ahead.
Okay.
You have no
additional
comments.
Excellent.
Only to answer questions.
Okay. I will open the public hearing to public comment. If anyone has public comment on the budget topic only. No one? No written? That's what you said, right?
Right.
Okay, I'll close the public hearing and open the topic up for council discussion. Anyone? Have anything?
Pretty straightforward.
Pretty much talked about most of it last meeting. I don't have
Just
any.
repeat what I said last time, so,
Yeah.
you know.
That's where I am too. It's just, it's the same comments I made the last time, and I think it's pretty straightforward. Again, let me commend Karen and Greg and the rest of the staff for having the 2014-15 budget come in the way it did, and the decisions that you made actually saved the city quite a bit of money, so I really appreciate all your efforts moving forward.
What he said.
Yeah. That's fine.
I copied what you said in the first meeting.
So, okay, so no real discussion. So we'll, I guess I would accept a motion for one at a time, fiscal year 2015-16 budget adoption resolution, right?
Mm-hmm.
Page 22 of the budget.
I move we adopt the budget resolution 2015-2016.
Second. Nowak?
Yes.
Sexton?
Yes.
Walagora?
Aye.
Johnson? Yes. Nielsen?
Yes.
And next up, adopt the fiscal year 2015-16 appropriations resolution.
So moved.
Second. Sexton?
Yes.
Walagora?
Aye.
Johnson? Yes. Nielsen?
Yes.
Nowak?
Yes.
And adopt amended 2014-15 city budget, budgeted column titled 14-15 estimated current.
So moved.
Second.
Walagora?
Aye.
Johnson? Yes. Nielsen?
Yes.
Nowak?
Yes.
Sexton?
Yes.
All right, thank you again, Karen, and the rest of your staff for all that. Report of officers, we have the city attorney, update on Cheboygan Cement Products versus Glawe Incorporated and the city of Alpena. No.
Council has a memo, I'll try not to read directly from it, but a couple meetings back, Ms. Angie Skiba had came to the podium during public comment and based upon some things I believe that she had maybe heard in the community or been told in the community, requested that the city provide an update as to where it was and to try to give her a timeline as to when the sidewalks may be fixed. As most of you know, or I believe all of you know, this case started out in 2008, and the city was not involved in the case initially. When the case started out, it was a collection action by Cheboygan Cement versus Glawe for cement that it had sold to Glawe for use in the 0506, 06, 07 sidewalk projects and the 2007 Fletcher Street development, or the, improvement of the street, sewer, everything that got done over on Fletcher Street. And there was a dispute about how much Glawe owed Cheboygan. And at the time, it was certainly the belief of city representatives that Cheboygan and Glawe were working in good faith to try to resolve the issues, and that they both were keenly aware that problems occurred during the construction phase of not only the sidewalks but of Fletcher Street. And there was at least some, I don't want to say that they were friendly with each other because they were in the middle of a lawsuit, but there was certainly an acknowledgement on both of them that, or by both of them, that they needed to get it fixed. And we started off trying to figure out how to fix it, not so much as to whose fault it was, but to try to come to some common understanding or settlement of the matter and get it done. Well, as time went by in that lawsuit, certain things occurred. One of the main things was that Mr. Ryan, who represented Glawe, had some serious health problems. So the case kind of got pushed back. In any event, at some point in time, the ability to cooperate and try to come to a resolution that was fair to all the parties fell apart. Gloves came off and started duking it out. And at that point, the city got brought in as a third party. It was our position initially that we really weren't a necessary party to the lawsuit, that there was certainly an acknowledgement of liability on behalf of Glawe, and that the only question was whether it was Glawe's fault or whether it was Cheboygan's fault or whether it was some combination of their fault, but that we really didn't need to be, drug into it because our contract provides that Glawe, as the contractor, was responsible for any and all defects that any of its subcontractors may have created. But in any event, we were pulled into it, and a lot of work was done. Rich Sellinger did a heck of a job on the case, did a lot of work, compiled a lot of information. A lot of depositions took place, a lot of experts were hired, and ultimately a trial was held, and Judge Mack made a lot of different findings. And what I mean by that is there were claims going both ways for all different kinds of things. Ultimately, he made his decision after 6 days of trial, and it got appealed. And it got appealed not only by Cheboygan Cement for some of the rulings that went against it, but it got appealed by Glawe for some of the rulings that went against them. And so, as it worked its way through the Court of Appeals, we had another delay for some more medical issues for Mr. Ryan, and ultimately the Court of Appeals made a ruling. They upheld all of Judge Mack's rulings except in two areas, and they remanded it back to Judge Mack's court to make a more definite finding of facts on two issues. The one issue was during the trial there was some indication that Mike Ryan, on behalf of Glawe, had inquired of Cheboygan Cement that the product itself seemed to be a little grittier, and it seemed to be a little bit tougher to finish, and that he had voiced that concern to Cheboygan Cement. Cheboygan Cement's position was, we told Mr. Ryan there was slag in it and that he should adjust his finishing techniques so that we wouldn't have suffered the problems we suffered. Glawe and Mr. Ryan denied that, and ultimately the judge made a decision that because Glawe was at least put on notice that the product was a little different than what they were used to, that they had a duty to inquire further. And because they didn't inquire further, he assigned 75% of the liability to Cheboygan, 25% to Glawe, because he found Glawe should have went forward and tried to figure out what the problem was. So one of the issues on appeal was, since the court had made those factual findings and there was no objection by Glawe or no appeal by Glawe that the judge was wrong in that area, they asked the Court of Appeals to apply that to the Fletcher Street project as well, because it says the same logic applies. And even though the conversation about the grittiness of the mixture was during the sidewalk project, the question was, well, did it put Glawe on notice for Fletcher Street? And so got remanded and asked Judge Mack to make a ruling on that issue. And he ruled, yes, based upon the testimony, review of the testimony, the additional arguments that were made, that liability for Fletcher Street should also be apportioned 75-25. So he's made that ruling. And that will satisfy the Court of Appeals in terms of their remand. The second issue was a finance charge issue. And when Judge Mack made a finding that Glawe owed Cheboygan Cement a little over $51,000, it wasn't clear to the Court of Appeals whether part of that was a finance charge or whether that was principal amount due on the product supplied. During the trial, there were two arguments made. One argument was essentially on the purchase tickets. It's set on the back in real small print at the bottom. You know, if you don't pay it, a 1.5% monthly finance charge could be added. There was an argument about whether the parties ever really agreed to that, and there's a thing where goods are sold called the UCC, Uniform Commercial Code, and it's called the Battle of the Forms. And the Battle of the Forms says, well, you send me one form and I send it back. If I don't initial your changes, you don't initial my changes, then did we really agree to, what did we agree to? Did we agree to what, your form or my form or some other form? So the Court of Appeals said, rather than us trying to figure that out, Judge Mack, you figure it out. And then the second argument was Glawe once again put on notice when they didn't pay, when Cheboygan Cement's financial officer contacted Glawe and said, we're going to start charging you interest. Glawe denied that a conversation of that nature ever occurred, and further denied that even if the conversation did occur, nobody from Glawe ever agreed that they would start paying finance charge. So on both of those questions, the judge recently answered that the finance charges weren't part of the contract. There was just no meeting of the minds that they should be there, and that there was no agreement after that orally that would modify that in terms of making a finance charge appropriate. So he said, in a sense, yes, the $51,000 was higher than it should have been because part of that was interest. What he also said, though, is parties, I want you to go figure it out. You guys go figure out what part's interest, what part's not interest, and then bring it back to me, hopefully by stipulation. And for the past month or so, well, probably actually more than that, probably for the past 2 months now, Cheboygan and Glawe have been in conversations with each other that they keep me updated on, trying to agree to that number, but they haven't been able to agree to it as of today. So what will happen next if they don't agree pretty soon? I'm assuming Judge Mack's court will show cause the parties and say, why haven't you resolved this? What's the holdup? You know, do you need the court's intervention to resolve it? Now, once those two things are finally resolved, and one of them's already been resolved, but once that other issue is resolved, there'll be an order on that issue as well, and that could be appealed. Those issues could get appealed. If they do, obviously they'll slow us down even further. But my general sense of having discussed it with the folks that are involved, I don't think that those will be appealed, but they could be. I don't want to say they won't be. So that's the status of it as of this moment. Angie also asked me a question that kind of piqued my curiosity, I think at the last meeting, and that is there $500,000 sitting in an account somewhere that's been set aside to pay for this? And I said, well, if there is, I'd like find out where it's at and let me know. And certainly there was at least some, I don't even want to say rumor, but certainly some information that may be in the community that somehow the city's sitting on a $500,000 account that's going to be used to fix these sidewalks. I just wanted to clear to the public and to you folks that that's been said, so I don't know if any of you have been approached by any citizens wondering where that money is, but no money has been turned over to the city for fixing the sidewalks or Fletcher Street by Cheboygan Cement or Glawe. So any statements, rumors, innuendo to the contrary is just not accurate. So if there's any questions, I'll be willing to answer them. Otherwise, that's where we're at this moment.
Couple. I guess I'll go first.
Okay.
So in the end, once all this is done, there really isn't a whole lot of controversy yet as far as somebody owes the city money. It's just where and who it's going to come from. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, the ruling is that Glawe owes the city because Glawe is the contracting party. But the ruling inside that ruling is that Cheboygan Cement owes Glawe for essentially 75% of that damage award.
So best case scenario, when might that happen?
Well, assuming there's no appeal, then after 21 days runs out, we would then be allowed to take enforcement action. So we could then start trying to enforce the judgment against Glawe, who will then most likely try to start enforcing it against Cheboygan Cement, or at least Cheboygan Cement's share of it.
That process could still take quite a while.
Correct.
Okay. The other question was something that Ms. Skiba mentioned when she was up here the other day, as far as should the city be using either one of these contractors, and is that allowable? Is it not allowable? Is that, in your opinion, what is?
I can't quote the policy number off the top of my head, but there is a council policy that basically says whenever we're in active litigation with a contractor, that the city reserves a right on that basis alone to not contract further with them. But the court has not put any limitations on Glawe in terms of, Glawe's required to fix it. And they can, as of this moment, they can use whoever they felt comfortable with using. I mean, they'd still be subject to liability if they used Cheboygan Cement or L&S or any other concrete supplier, and the product was defective. Glawe would still be, would still be contractually liable to the city. So there's been no ruling in the lawsuit that Cheboygan Cement can't be the one to supply the product to Glawe to fix the sidewalks. And like I said, our council policy is generally when we're actively involved in litigation, we reserve the right to not contract with that particular company.
Bill, if Cheboygan Cement is unable to pay Glawe for whatever reason, is Glawe still on the hook for the full amount to the city?
They are. Now, with just a couple other things, I guess, inside that, is there's a couple of other things that will affect that bottom line number. And one is the fact that Glawe owes Cheboygan Cement, not $51,000, but something less than that. As well, the city, when we knew that the sidewalks were defective, we withheld a final payment to Glawe, somewhere in the $26,000, $27,000, $28,000 range. So that's part of that whole equation. And then there's also there's some monies that have to be used for engineering and for traffic control and things that are inside there that probably could create another dispute where Judge Mack might have to sort out how it's done. So they might affect what that bottom line number is in terms of exchange of funds. But Glawe's on the hook, and if, it doesn't matter if Cheboygan pays them or not, Glawe's still on the hook for it.
And I did ask, excuse me, I asked Greg earlier today how many properties we were talking about here. And you told me
147 private properties that are affected. Most of these are in residential. They're part of the sidewalk program, what'd you say, in 5, 6, I believe, are the years. And then the balance is basically the city, which has to do with the Fletcher Street project, which is ours. So, yeah, those are the ones. And none of them, there's been no work on any of the sidewalks, and the intent is not to do any until this is finally settled, is my understanding. Is that correct, Rick? So, I know it was brought to my attention that there were areas where work was being done. And yes, we are still doing sidewalks under our voluntary program, which probably thanks to Steve Shulowitz has gotten on the radar of people again, because Steve Schultz told me that the numbers are up this year in terms of people calling about that. But that's anywhere in the city where people agree or want their sidewalks either repaired or whatever, they pay 60%, the city pays 40%. So those are ongoing, but they're all throughout the city, but none of them are part of, or any of the sidewalks that are involved in this dispute.
So even those 100 and some residences that have the defective sidewalks that would pay the 60% are actually deterred from doing that because it's in litigation. So it's the unfortunate part about the legal process.
Because I didn't know, and I don't know if you have an answer, Bill, that if somebody went ahead because they got tired of waiting and went into the voluntary and did it on one of them, does that impact the lawsuit? Would somebody like either Glawe or that say we want that particular part of their sidewalk removed from the settlement because the people went ahead and fixed it on their own?
Yeah, I think we'd probably have to look at it on a case-by-case basis, because what the court did is basically set a, and I mean, I guess it's somewhat arbitrary, but you had to draw the line somewhere. And what I mean by drawing the line is if there was one small speck of concrete that had basically flaked away or flecked away, okay, in a section, a 4-foot section of concrete or 6-foot section of concrete. The question for the court was, are we going to say that whole thing has to be replaced, and are we going to say, no, that's not reasonable? So what Judge Mack did is essentially said if it's damaged by greater than 10%, it was going to get repaired or replaced. And what that also did, though, is from a cost standpoint, you might have 3 sections of concrete in a row that have to be replaced, and then one that doesn't, and then one that does, and then one that doesn't. And it's actually, I mean, I learned a little bit more about concrete than I ever wanted to. It's actually, the way I understand it, it's actually cheaper to rip them all out than it is to cut around.
That's what
Put a
Steve
new
told
one
me
in,
today.
cut around, put a new one in. So I'm not sure how that's going to be accomplished when push comes to shove, because it may be cheaper overall in some areas to rip out more sections than what the court actually ordered to be replaced. And I'm sure there'll be citizens that will necessarily not understand or agree why some of mine's getting replaced and some of it isn't, and why this arbitrary 10% rule got set. But you know, that was the ruling. That's been upheld by the Court of Appeals, so you know, we're all going to have to live within the confines of that. And that's, I guess that'll, as time goes by, that'll, you know, it'll probably be some additional disputes or some additional complaints by citizens, because they may not all be happy with that, with it being fixed that way.
You'll be there to explain that.
Let the engineer do it.
But you gave them the idea.
Rich?
Actually, we went out with Judge Mack and walked quite a few of these. There was, as Bill indicated, a lot more than 147 property owners that had some type of a defect in their concrete. But the judge says, no, yes, yes, no, no, yes. I mean, and that's basically, and there was no arguing it. I mean, that was just the way it was. I've asked Bill, the preferred option, cut us a check. Just give us the money and we'll take care of getting the sidewalk replaced. We're gonna obviously, concentrate on the property owners that have defective sidewalk as our #1 priority. There was some additional deterioration, but after 5 years, 10 years actually, on some of that sidewalk, yeah, you expect that. But we get a number of calls every day, and our hands are tied as far as being able to do it. We did, and we did go out and we had, because somebody was putting a driveway in through a section of this. In that case, we replaced it and we sent Glawe the bill for the concrete. And we told them, this is what we're doing, and we're sending you the bill. But that was so somebody could get a driveway in where one didn't exist. But that's the only ones that we are aware of that are on the defective, on this 147 property owner list that has been replaced. We've basically we've had to take a hands-off approach because it is in the litigation process.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thanks. Great update. Anybody got any other questions? Thanks, sir. No communications and petitions. Unfinished business, second reading, ordinance number 15-430, an ordinance amending chapter 38, fire prevention and protection, article 1 in general, section 38.4, authority of council to permit public displays of fireworks.
Consistent with council policy, I would not read this to you unless you direct me to do so. At this point, we just need either a motion to accept it and vote on it, or not. Council pleasure.
When we last met, we said, is there a way that we can adopt and/or change or make changes to the ordinance at this time, Bill, or is it just a yes, no, yes with changes?
If a change is proposed, the change itself has to be voted on and would have to be approved, and then you'd have to vote on the whole ordinance.
The only question I have on this, and just so council's aware, last time I didn't say much just because I was gathering a lot of information from others' opinions and so on, but for me, the ordinance in the 2 sections addresses the Chinese lanterns, which, I'm agreeable with, but the ordinance on the fireworks themselves, just want to share my thoughts and opinion with you. First of all, I do believe that the state of Michigan has declared that fireworks are legal in the state, and I agree with that aspect of it. But the one thing I really struggle with is I don't think someone's right to shoot fireworks should ever interfere with someone's right to peacefully enjoy their backyard. But at the same time, I think, for me, I think that we can do better than what's currently written in this ordinance. I would propose that we actually change the 4th of July time to allow fireworks from the 1st of July through the 15th, so citizens can have a couple of weeks to celebrate the 4th of July, as we often see. That would be one change that I would propose, but I'm agreeable with the rest of the ordinance. So I guess my proposal would be from extending the time from the 1st through the 15th.
And for the 4th of July holiday only.
Yes, that is what I would propose.
I spoke enough, I guess, at the last meeting. I'm not really thrilled about the whole ordinance itself at all. I guess, but one of my thoughts and understanding that I was the only one sitting here that wasn't, I understand that, I get that, but one of my issues was very similar to what Mike is saying, and that was 4th of July lands on a Wednesday. You will be able to fire off your personal fireworks on Tuesday night, Wednesday night, and Thursday night. Not either of the preferable weekend nights on either side of the holiday, but only those 3 nights. So if someone had, if somebody was going to use what we would call, maybe common sense or care for their neighbors and say, well, we bought these fireworks, and we'll let the kids fire them off, but let's wait till a day that makes sense, like maybe Friday night or Saturday night. We're basically not allowing them to make that decision. They have to fire them off either Wednesday or Thursday, excuse me. So I wanted to maybe try and find a way to open it up a little bit. I don't know I would venture to guess, just looking at the list of holidays, that obviously Independence Day is probably your bigger one. I don't know if anybody does a lot of fireworks on New Year's, maybe another, but I haven't seen any go off for Washington's birthday or anything like that. So, but these other days are obviously allowable for day before, day of, and day after. So I would certainly be open to, as a non-fireworks ordinance person on council, I would open it. I'd be receptive to opening it up, anything at all. And so I did kind of have that whole weekend thing a little bit in mind. So
I just saw it as written myself, I thought it was a little bit too restrictive for that holiday. That seems to be the holiday that people want to enjoy them. And, and my background is my entire childhood and youth, there were no fireworks in the state of Michigan. So I'd rather enjoy them, and I don't think we need to enjoy them the entire summer. And I think this I see as a compromise.
We need a motion, correct?
I'm not sure if you want any of us to chime in on that, or,
And I
Got something to chime in?
I'd be open to hear from either you or Bill, and I don't know, this is second reading. Tomorrow's not the 4th of July, so I don't know if suggestions of this may be more appropriate to send back
I'm okay with that.
for another look, if that's possible. I don't want to jump to revising something that you guys don't have a chance to sit down and talk about amongst yourselves. So,
I was going to suggest this, if there are changes and council, there's a majority of council that wishes to change that, we still got enough time where we could bring it back on the, I believe it's the June 1st.
1st of June.
Which will still give us enough time to publish, before July 4th, even if you make it, July 1st, or you made it the week before July 4th, whatever you wanted to do, we'd still have enough time. I'd be more comfortable making sure we've got language that everybody's agreeable to, rather than trying to change it and publish it on the spot right here.
And I apologize to council, it's just I wanted to seek a lot of public input, and I'd asked a lot of questions over the last couple of weeks from a lot of different people, so this is where I feel this is a good compromise for all.
I think your compromise is reasonable. The fireworks in the class that we're trying to regulate were illegal before the Fireworks Safety Act of 2011, all throughout Michigan. There was a lot of non-compliance, but they were illegal. They were made legal after 2011 with the intent of regulating them at the local level and regulating them more stringently by state agents as well, which hasn't really come to fruition. However, what you're suggesting doesn't seem unreasonable to me. I think compromise is a good thing.
Thank you.
Just wanna, I'll throw it out there and be the bad guy. I don't want my neighbor to have 11 days in a row that they can light fireworks. And I think this kind of came up in the first place because a lot of people complained over the years about fireworks use outside of the holiday. When my kids were little, we knew on the 4th, we headed out of town until our kids got a little bit older so they could enjoy it. And I think people can accommodate the 4th if they're not into that aspect of it. 11 days in a row, I don't know. Yeah, you'd like to think that one individual wouldn't do that.
Yes.
Yeah, there might be one neighbor here, somebody else there, but I guess I don't know. That's just my first thought, is that's a long leeway. And it'll be a point where the 4th is on a weekend. And so then we're looking at just the opposite, where the holiday's on the weekend and then you have all the next week to do that as well.
I assure you, I can assure you and promise you, I know some people who will do that for 11 days. I promise, every year.
You know,
And
go ahead, I'm sorry.
There are just so many things about that scream danger to me. And I wonder about law enforcement. How long do we expect them to hold our hands and be sure we don't hurt each other? That's just, and I don't understand why the holiday can't be the holiday, even the leeway of a day before, a day after, and the day of. And then the rest of the time have a peaceful life in the city limits anyway. And then whatever else you do, other places at your cottage or whatever is what you do.
I'll take an 11-day Christmas if you want to do it.
Well,
Somebody would do
just as a
fireworks.
thought, I mean, the other would be if you're looking at the situation of the holiday falling right at midweek, and which would be the 4th, so you said, in which case it would be if you went to the Monday, or possibly the Sunday, which would be, I think, the 1st, and then through the following Saturday, so it's not quite, and it's actually 15 days, because you said from the 1st through the 15th, didn't you?
That's right.
So you're talking
Half the month.
15 days, is you shorten that to about a 7-day or so period. Maybe the 3 days, whether you start on the 1st or the 2nd of Monday, and then go through the following Saturday. That would give you, and then of course, obviously, it's going to fall differently, but that would at least cover that instance where you have a midweek 4th of July, that you could start on Monday, you end on Saturday, and it's over with.
Yeah, if you went from, because I just went through the next several months to see which one had a 4th that landed on a Wednesday, happens to be November, but if the 4th lands on a Wednesday, the Saturday before is the 31st, the Sunday after is the 8th. We're talking the 31st through the 8th.
Well, I would say even wait till, not, do it Sunday night or Monday, not the full weekend before, but.
The full weekend after.
Yeah, but it would give it at least through that weekend. Weekend afterwards, at least through Saturday night. And then hopefully Sunday could be a peaceful night.
And I don't, and that's where, I guess there's just a couple of things just to clarify where I'm coming from. I am not here to ever protect somebody from themselves. That's just always been my take. And I don't think that any ordinance that we pass is going to keep somebody from lighting something off in their hand and holding on to it for too long.
True.
That's just
Absolutely.
so, I guess telling me how many emergency room issues there are and stuff really doesn't, that's just, for me, that's just not where I come from. But I do understand the issues with the noise and launching them, and don't get me wrong, I live in a neighborhood where it's quite enjoyed itself. But I'm that guy that lays there and says, it's 4th of July. It's 4th of July. It's going to go away sooner or later, and sure as heck it always does.
Our concern with consumer class fireworks is that they leave the ground, they shoot. So it's not so much the person with a firecracker in their hand, it's the person with a bottle rocket that lights the house next door. That's more of our concern.
Right, yeah, and I understand that, and I do. And another point I guess I wanted to make about the day before, the day of, and the day after is, here's an issue that I have, and neither one of these suggestions that either the current ordinance or the one that Mr. Nowak had suggested are really, I don't know if it pertains to probably the most dangerous areas when everybody's down at Mishikiwa's and Starlight and Bayview and everywhere into this crowded ordeal to watch the city fireworks, and everybody starts launching off the ones that they bought. And there again, if they've only got 2 days, 3 days to launch it, day before, day after, and day of, the day of is, the day that they may or may not choose to do it, with given some more time prior to and after, they might be launching those somewhere else other than down in the city. Or is that illegal anyhow, for them to be on space?
It's illegal anyhow to launch it from city property.
Right.
But obviously there is a great deal of non-compliance.
which is another one of my issues with the ordinance in itself, is I just not so sure that it's completely enforceable. But that's just me. That's where I'm coming from. I would entertain any flexibility with the date, so I'll leave it up to if you want to make a motion.
And I too would, if if council was more comfortable with fewer days, or Greg's suggestion of at least covering the weekend, afterwards or such, I too would be comfortable to compromise in that area too. I just think that, again, the day before, the day after, and the holiday around that time of year when people are celebrating summer and celebrating the 4th of July, I think we're just a little too tight, in my opinion. And like the mayor, I live in a neighborhood where neighbors rather enjoy shooting them off and stuff, and I just don't believe that the rest of the summer that the neighbor who wants to peacefully enjoy the backyard should be interfered with either. I don't think one's right to shoot a firework should ever interfere with one's right to enjoy. So I was looking for a compromise, and that was my deal on this. To the mayor's point, I disagree in the fact that, with the ordinance itself, I look at this ordinance as a good lock. It keeps the honest ones honest. If they know there's an ordinance that is preventing other than those days, I think it will greatly reduce, those areas. So that's, again, my opinion. And the rest of council, I am open to any other dates and or suggestions that you have.
Could you please clarify if we have a 7-day or an 8-day or whatever? What if the 4th of July is on Friday?
It would be the same thing. It would just move around, but it would still be the same number of days.
Would the days always follow the 4th of July, or would they be?
Well, no, you
some
could
in
have
front,
the,
some
well,
back?
if you did it in the middle of the week, at least by my suggestion, and that's all it is. If you started on Monday, it would be 2 days before through, 1, 2, 3, 4 days, or 3 days after.
Now, that sounds like a nightmare to enforce, because who's going to keep up with it? I mean, and
Well,
people don't
I mean,
want that
it's the
much
same with a
nuance.
3-day. You still have to enforce the day, but make sure if it is 1 day before the day before, and that we're caught under with state law, that's what they are allowed. All we're doing is expanding it. to-
Oh, I just see people being thoroughly confused every year. Now, what is that law? Now, when does it
Well,
start? When does it
I
start?
mean, I'm sure it's confusing now, because people
I'm
probably
sure.
don't know what the dates are.
I'm sure.
All we could do is, we certainly have the means to publicize it through press releases, putting it on our internet, of what these days are, and especially around the 4th, that if you do expand it, what those days are each time. We can do that. Doesn't mean people are, because we had another issue where a person says, I don't read the paper, I don't listen to the radio, I don't watch TV, and I don't get the internet. So, if they do that, it's kind of hard to get the news out.
You could claim that for just about it, not knowing just about anything.
Yeah, so, at some point, we put it out the best we can, and that's what we do.
In the event that we do, that there is some compromise here, what, I guess from your perspective, or maybe the police chief's perspective, what would be easier for you, whether it be a floating 3 before, 3 after, or 1st through the 8th, or doesn't really even?
It really matters.
Doesn't-
As long as we know what the rule is, that's what we'll enforce.
Oh, you can't.
I think the 1st through the 8th covers the weekend, no matter where it
Makes it
falls.
pretty, and then it's kind of easier to remember than what you said, 3 days
Right.
before and 3 days after.
crazy.
I like the dates myself as well, just the personal preferences.
And I appreciate the compromise. I guess I just simplify it, and the 4th's the 4th. If you light them on the 4th, you're celebrating the holiday. If you light them other days, you're blowing stuff up.
Right.
Well, you can't.
And there's not a,
We have to stay, doesn't the state tell you
Day
that the?
before, day of, and day after, that's the
Right.
most restricted.
That's the most
we can be.
restricted we can be, so we can't say just the 4th.
I would just like to remind council, there's a reason why this ordinance was brought before you. The multitude of complaints that we received for the past years far outweighed the people that wanted to light them off. And, nobody wants to be the killjoy, and I'm not overly concerned about the public safety aspect of it. I mean, we haven't had too many incidents. However, it truly is a matter of public peace. And I think someone uses the term about common sense, and call me a cynic, maybe I'm become a bit jaded in my life, during this time, but common sense is no longer common sometimes, so just put that out there. But again, there's a reason why this ordinance was brought before you. And I believe it's reasonable as written.
And people can go out in the township and the county and
Right.
without the restriction, right?
Absolutely.
I'm always concerned with any one person or one group, a neighborhood or whatever, honey, whatever they are, this group, having a sense of entitlement over the rest of us, when the rest of us are pretty clearly in the majority. And I feel badly for people who feel that they don't have a voice. I do. And even if we compromise for 8 days, that's 8 miserable days for a lot of people, but whatever.
If I may add also, that there's 10 listed holidays, and whether they're all going to be
Right.
used or not, that's going to make 30 days throughout the year where they would have an opportunity to use those. So it's
Right.
30 days when you really look at it, all total.
Yeah. Very good, and I appreciate what you guys have done and what you're doing for the community, don't get me wrong.
Oh, we understand.
It's just-
So, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we want to wrap it up.
We would need to consider a motion first to change as written. If that passes, then my suggestion would be to let me modify it, get it back out to you, come back for a vote on June 1st. If that modification doesn't pass, and council then considers the ordinance as written, then a vote could be had on that tonight.
All right, so I'll entertain a motion to make any revisions first.
I move that we revise the ordinance to indicate allowing fireworks from July 1st through July 8th.
Second.
Do you want me to call the roll, or do
Oh,
you want to
please,
talk about it?
unless there's other discussion.
No, okay. Johnson?
No.
Nielsen?
No.
Nowak?
Yes.
Sexton?
No.
Walagora?
Yes. Okay, with that failed, then I'll entertain a motion to pass the ordinance as written. Is that what you meant?
Correct.
I move we pass the ordinance as written.
Second.
When you're ready.
Nielsen?
Yes.
Nowak?
No.
Sexton?
Yes.
Walagora?
No.
And Johnson?
Yes.
Very good. Okay, next up is the Duffy Gorski storm water proposal. Rich has a presentation for that.
On April 6th, Mr. Gorski made a presentation to the city council and a proposal to perform some work on behalf of the city. City staff has reviewed that proposal as presented, and while we commend Mr. Gorski for his commitment, we feel it is not appropriate to proceed with this proposal. If the city were to look at having a professional study conducted, we would need to proceed following and adhering to the city purchasing policy, Council Policy Statement 18. Staff would need to solicit a request for qualifications, request for proposals, to ensure that the most qualified firm with experience and abilities to fulfill the needs is contracted with. The stormwater discharges were sampled in the past by the EPA to develop the water regulations, the stormwater regulations as applied countrywide. Based on their findings, they have concentrated on dense use, high urbanized areas as the major source of pollutants. The EPA established the stormwater rules and regulations for communities of various sizes beginning in 2000 and revised those rules in 2005. These rules were based on the above evaluation. The city of Alpena, based on our size, being a small community in the eyes of the EPA, is excluded from the rules. This does not indicate that the city has not worked to improve our storm system and strive to improve water quality. While specific analysis of storm discharges within the city of Alpena has not been conducted, the general analysis conducted by the EPA of various storm sewer discharges throughout the country is representative of the debris and materials included in typical storm sewer discharges. Mr. Gorski outlined and showed the debris flowing from the storm discharges in the city of Alpena. The discharge appeared to include materials, leaves, sticks, bits of paper, etc., which floats on top and would be washed through the system to the discharge. These types of materials would not be removed by the sumps in the catch basins, which are designed to allow heavier materials, sand, stone, etc., to be trapped prior to entering the storm sewer system. The videos shown by Mr. Gorski all show an oil sheen on the water surface at or near the discharge points. This is not uncommon, and even a small amount of oil, even a few drops, can generate a sheen quite large as it spreads across the surface. A boat motor is a prime example with its exhaust discharge generating quite a large sheen on the water when you start it. All of the above debris and waste is consistent with the general analysis conducted by the EPA. You know, another prime example. When we first pave a road, the first storm sewer, or first rain event that happens, there's a sheen on that water, and it's the natural oils coming out of the asphalt. But you know, those are, I mean, that's part of the construction activities. Within the stormwater rules and regulations, the EPA has identified best management practices, BMPs, for larger or regulated communities to follow. The City of Alpena has implemented or had in place many of these BMPs. These include public education and outreach. United Water began a public education program for our stormwater system and placed stickers at many of the catch basins in our community which say, "Dump no waste, drains the river." All of the catch basin castings that we have purchased for probably the last 10 years, or we call them they're fish castings, and that's stamped right into the top of the casting. You know, dump no waste, drains the river. Public participation and involvement. United Water worked with schools and civic organizations to install the stickers at the catch basins and presented the information to the public as requested. Illicit discharge detection and elimination. While the storm sewer has been separated from the sanitary, we have in the past found locations where a sanitary sewer line from a property is connected to the storm sewer system. When discovered, the city eliminates that connection to the storm sewer and connects them to the sanitary sewer. The city has also video inspected many areas of the city storm system looking for illicit connection and open storm sewer manholes to look for indications of illicit discharges. We are not at this time aware of any such illicit connections and have not found any in the recent past. It's probably been 10 plus years since we've discovered one. Construction site runoff. The City of Alpena has an erosion and sediment control ordinance and enforces the program with our soil erosion and sedimentation officer, Don Gilnett. Post-construction runoff control. The city works with the developers to incorporate BMPs in the design to control runoff from sites once completed. Pollution prevention, good housekeeping. The City of Alpena follows pollution prevention practices as referenced in the following manner. Regular street sweeping. We operate 2 street sweepers and sweep throughout the summer. Annual catch basin cleaning. All of our catch basins are cleaned annually, and there's a 2-foot sump below the discharge line that traps the heavier debris that would settle out. And those are vectored out through United Water on an annual basis. Winter salt reduction. In the recent past, we've worked with the Michigan Department of Transportation to calibrate salt spreaders and have worked to reduce the volume of salt used per snow event. Pesticide use and reduction. And I can only speak to city-owned property. The city has reduced locations where fertilizers and pesticides are used and limit them only to the high-traffic, high-use lawn areas. Probably the band shelter. We do treatments on that. Well, there are many more activities the city could pursue to improve water quality of the discharge. Many are economically unfeasible. One such example is the implementation of a self-cleaning catch basins, which remove floating debris from the storm discharge to the storm system at the catch basin level. With an excess of 2,400 catch basins throughout the street system, the cost to purchase the catch basins, excavate the old ones, install the new catch basins, connect them to the system, and repair the curb and street would be close to a $5 million project on the conservative side. The city and United Water, as our partner, have worked to comply with as many of the BMPs as practical and as outlined in the Stormwater Phase 2 rules as established by the EPA. I mean, it's not perfect out there, but we do follow the BMPs. I mean, we get calls. We had nice weather. Why aren't your street sweepers out? A, we didn't have one yet. We were still down one, but they have water in them. I can't take them out when it's 30 degrees. We have a chance of them freezing up and damaging. So we couldn't, I mean, we may have one nice day, but I can't get them out and get them rolling.
I think as long as we always just constantly remember that there are things that we can do. The street sweeper went through my neighborhood today, and actually it probably did a better job than I've ever seen it do. So I don't know if it's the new one that went through or if the older one is working better. But my street was pretty darn clean today. So, and I understand, and I thought it was really great for Duffy to bring the videos in, and if nothing more than an awareness tool for us and to understand what that is. And I'd like to kind of just keep going on the educational level, because at this point, I mean, it's completely understandable that we can't make the storm drains stop going into the river and the bay. So maybe if we can kind of keep working on some different awareness type things. It's butts, is a lot of butts. In the water, and so that disturbs me, and it always does. So, and we know that they're not coming from people necessarily on the, and I mean cigarette butts, right? Everybody out there is smiling a little bit.
We're assuming.
I meant cigarette butts. So maybe if we can start some issues with that to try and curb a lot of that. And I was going to ask you, and several other debris in there. I was going to ask you though if you thought that it would be in our best interest with some of this that's going into the storm or going out the storm drains to clean the basins more than once a year, or are what you're finding in the basins pretty much they're not completely full every time you clean them, or should we look into maybe doing that twice?
It's very difficult, and I'm going to speak for Mike here, but it's very difficult for him to get through a complete round, because it's not just cleaning catch basins. They clean about 20% of our sanitary sewer system on an annual basis. That's one piece of equipment, and it's running, every day that it can be out. Right now it's down, it's going to be down for about a month, getting a new frame put underneath it. But that is a piece of equipment that's owned by United Water. We contract with them, we pay them to do that.
Right.
At a very reasonable rate. A good example, Michigan Department of Transportation contracted with us to contract with United Water to clean their catch basins, because we could do it at about half the cost of what they were paying a subcontractor to do. So it's a very economical practice for us to do, but it's just time. 2,400 catch basins, you're opening every one of them up. You can only clean so many before you have to go back and dump it. Plus you've got reactive sanitary sewer, reactive storm sewer. If we have a plug in a storm sewer, they'll go out and jet rod that. Sanitary sewer, like I said, they clean about 20% of the mains on an annual basis to try to minimize backups, problems within our sanitary system. So I don't see it being a practical option for us to clean them more than once. And quite frankly, a lot of times unless it's adjacent to a gravel street, something like that, where you're going to have a lot of gravel tracked out. Most of our driveways are paved, the streets are paved. You don't fill up a 2-foot sump in all the catch basins on an annual basis.
Just as a general observation, that sump is in there to keep the solids below where the overflow pipe is. If they get into the overflow pipe, that catch basin's not gonna work. So, you know, if you see one that's not working, that's the reason why generally, or it's the grate is covered with leaves. We really don't experience a lot of those. I think one cleaning a year is probably sufficient in most situations. Unless you have a water main break and you get a lot of sand that gets washed into the catch basin as a result of the water main break, then we'll go out there and we'll clean those right after the break as soon as we get the equipment out there.
Okay. And I think a certain part of this is individual responsibility as property owners to, I mean, it's not that much to go out when you, and unfortunately we see people will blow, you know, they'll cut the grass and then they have the clippings laying on, and they take the blower and they blow them out into the gutter. You know, if you just clean them up yourself, put them in a bag, eventually haul them out to the compost pile and clean up the gutter, or you see, as I saw a fellow this winter, it was a little different, it wasn't getting leaves away, but breaking the ice away from a catch basin at a corner so the water could drain to it because it was warm, but if there was still a lot of ice. But just, if you've got a catch basin in front of your house that is covered, clean it out. Just remove the leaves and things of this sort. That will make a big difference as well. So, I mean, that's part of the education process, just making people aware and that it doesn't take much.
Yeah, even cleaning the streets, I mean, if you get a downpour, the cigarette butts that are on the grass or in driveways, that stuff all gets washed into the gutter, and even street sweeping doesn't take care of that.
Right.
You know, and unfortunately, you know, the conditions that Mr. Gorski saw were after probably a fairly large rain, and a lot of that stuff you can't really control because it's coming off of front yards, it's coming off of driveways. And the catch basins aren't designed to remove floatables. But cigarette butts and sticks and stuff like that, they all float, and they'll go right through the system.
I would agree with staff's recommendation in the sense that, you know, we have to follow our purchasing policy, and again, we thank Mr. Gorski for bringing it up. We had those junior high kids here before. We've all been down there. We've seen the videos. I think despite the city's best efforts and the efforts of a lot of citizens, it's still an issue. You know, and again, the cigarette butts, it's a little embarrassing to our tourism aspect of it. You guys are talking about the catch basins, but just as a couple of things to throw out there that you're probably just going to shoot down real quick. On the how many areas does it actually go into the bay? So is it?
There's two big ones that are in the bay. One is right down by Starlight Beach, and the other is at Blair Street Pier. Those are the two main discharge points. And there's numerous in the river.
Yeah, numerous to go into the river, both upstream of the 9th Avenue Dam and downstream. You know, some of them you can see, some of them you can't. Good prime examples across right next to the post office. There's one that's probably submerged down about 6 feet that discharges into the river, and that drains a good portion of the north side of the community.
Is it possible to just look into screening where the water actually hits, or where the storm drains actually hit the water, and just screen it better so the little stuff's not getting through there, and the cigarette butts and that type of thing, or not?
That increases the maintenance that you have to perform on it. That would be like the leaves going over the grate on the catch basin. They're going to plug the catch basin off. Same thing would happen with the screen. If you put a screen in there, the material that it's filtering out is going to eventually stop the water.
Back it up.
From running through it.
A good example is over at the wastewater plant with the debris that gets into our sanitary system. I mean, we have a series of screens and a conveyor that operates 24 hours a day to remove that. So that, I mean, because if we didn't, we just plug up and start backing up the system.
Now, this is probably going to be a dumb question, but why can't the stormwater just go right to the treatment plant?
It did at one time, and unfortunately, you can't design a system that's capable of handling the volumes of water that you get during a deluge of rain.
Just too much water too fast for the plant to handle?
There used to be 20 million gallons a day of water that went through the plant. And that would overload the plant, that would cause more dangerous discharges to the lake because it was contaminated with sanitary sewage. So EPA in the 70s said you have to separate. We're going to give you money. We're going to give you money to improve your plant. But at the same time, you have to commit to separate your sanitary from your storm sewer.
Well, it's interesting, I just read an article today in Detroit where they still have some combined sewers apparently.
lots, yeah.
Because they said they're looking at a program, because one business, I can't remember what it was, some type of retail business, the city has started charging businesses if they are draining like their parking lots in, and it goes into the combined sewer, which means it gets treated at their plants. This business is paying $8,000 a month to the city for that cost. So they're looking at designing where they will take that water and move it to like a vacant lot, a couple, down the street, and create an artificial wetland and drain it into there. And then from there, they can either drain it to the river or whatever. So they're looking at solutions because they have still ongoing issues of combined storm and sanitary, and it's affecting, for them, economic development because they are now charging, their water system is now charging some hefty costs to business.
Even places where the systems are separated, like Alpena Township doesn't really have a sophisticated storm sewer collection system like the city does. They have ditches.
Right.
So when then there's new development there, they actually have an ordinance that requires that development to have a retention pond to hold the solids, so you're not getting the tremendous rushes of water through the ditches.
And we require on-site for new development, where there is the room to do it. Let's say 23 North, that you would have on-site drainage, retention, things of that sort. To again, reduce the amount that either goes in up there to a ditch or into the storm drain. So, we do those types of controls as well through institutional control.
I think when EPA originally established the rules, they did what Mr. Gorski suggested. They required sampling. They looked at what the impact was from the pollutants that were getting washed out with storm sewers. And they made a determination that a cost-benefit analysis was done. It would cost a whole heck of a lot more money than the benefit that would be derived from putting in a treatment system to clean up the storm sewer water. Intermittent flows. It's not something that's happening all the time. It's just rain events. So I think that based on the cost-benefit analysis, they determined that if the community was using those best management practices, they were minimizing the impact of those storm sewer or the storm water events. And the city has been following those practices for probably 15 years.
Is it worse in the spring because of all the things that get collected in the snowbanks? And
it's hard to say whether it's worse in the spring or not. I mean, I've seen some events where storm sewer manhole covers were lifted right off of the casting because there was so much water in there. And that kind of a rainfall event, it's going to wash a lot of stuff down. Seen it in the fall, seen it in the spring. I mean, you can't control Mother Nature.
Well, I appreciate the report. I really do, and I appreciate what Duffy Gorski and the school system kids in science class were able to do in science class, I think. I think we should, I still want to stay on it. I think everybody's kind of interested in staying on it. If we just keep, maybe bringing up some different ideas. Sean had some pretty good, the statements about filtering that water or containing it somehow before it dumps into the river or anything like that. I mean, maybe there's something else out there that'll work in that manner. Other than awareness, and I'm serious, I think we really should start dealing with the littering aspect of the whole process here and what the issue is. So, but maybe that's for another time. Something that staff can work on possibly and talk about. So, with that said, you don't need a receipt and file on that or anything, do you?
I think since they recommended that we not
Oh, okay.
do his proposal, yeah, it'd be best to make a motion.
I move we receive and file.
Second.
Noak?
Yes.
Sexton?
Yes.
Walagora?
Aye.
Johnson?
Yes.
Nielsen?
Yes.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
You are watching All About Alpena.